Alright. Hello mate, welcome back to the channel. Today we have number 20 of 36 and we're going to be doing our first Templar Ascendancy. So I recently did an Ascendancy battle with none other than Dreamcore and Talkative Tri. And in that, we all took a Templar idea and then we ran with it. So the two guys decided to do their version of a Dark Templar and I decided to do the Holy Paladin in the Zealot. If you want to watch that, I will be doing a standalone video for the Zealot at some point. So don't worry, you're not going to miss it. However, this was my opportunity. I wanted to take the chance to do my version of what I think a Dark Paladin, Dark Templar could be. And that I'm calling the FELLSWORN. Alright, here we are at the presentation screen. As you can see, an outline of the tree here. We've got a couple of T2 nodes and a duo node to get into, as well as a load of T1s. So before we do that, as always, what we like to do in this series is ground ourselves in the idea, the concept, the theme, and a little bit of lore that we've written up. With no Templar order to quell his curiosity, soul magic became his weapon of choice, leaving only ash and whispers in his wake. Each swing shrieks with profanity and strikes with the fury of the abyss. Binding his foes to him beyond their last breath, he is feared by both the living and the dead. And in this FELLSWORN crusade, he walks the path between light and shadow, forsaking all redemption until eternal judgment grants him absolution. So the idea is this is a man, a Templar, who has decided that any means possible to get the power he needs to, in his mind, save or achieve whatever it is that he's on a mission to do. Whether that's saving Rayclast, whether that's getting redemption or vengeance on a god, or, you know, you can make that up for yourself. But the idea here is he's willing to go to the dark side to ultimately what he believes will be get absolution and will be justified in the end. Alright, let's have a look at the themes. So straight away you've kind of, as I mentioned in the lore there's this idea of like abyssal lichdom to a slight degree with the soul magic. So we've got things like souls, we've got damage over time, binding, and chaos. So let's get into the nodes and start talking about it, right? I'll start off down on the left here. A lot of these travel nodes are armor and energy shield and increased damage, so quite a generic kind of framework to build off. And then we've got terror. Reducing a rare or unique enemy to low health inflicts terror on them. Enemies affected by terror are permanently cursed with despair, bypassing your curse limit. And whilst nearby an enemy affected by terror, you have malevolence without spirit reservation. First off, let's just establish what we mean by fear. Fear is a mechanic we made up and hoped would be in the game. We made that up on the Defiler, which actually shares some thematic similarities to this class a little bit, which is kind of cool, but I wanted this to be more of a hit-based, armor stacking kind of, you know, melee version of that style. Essentially, any monster that is feared will run away from you for 4 seconds. To stop it being really annoying, they'll only run away from you at 25% movement speed. Maybe that needs to be 20% movement speed, but the idea is they're not going to get far, but they're turned away in fear. So every time you're fighting a unique enemy, rare enemy, they get down to low life. All the enemies around them, all their minions, adds, any other enemy in the pack is going to start running away and be feared. Now, fear has a 4-second cooldown, so an enemy can't be affected by feared if they've been affected recently. That just stops some shenanigans where you're constantly triggering it. So obviously having access to despair and malevolence through this mechanic doesn't mean that they'll always be up. However, when you're most needed, when you're against a rare or unique, you get them down to low life, it's going to kick in, and maybe this opens up your spirit for other uses. All right, let's now move around to the left, and we're going to get soul power. So this is kind of quite an iconic node for this, but it's also very niche. Skills other than weapon inherent skills and Val skills deal no damage. So to be clear, weapon inherent skills we saw recently in the latest build of PoE 2, they've added things that anytime you have a melee weapon, it's going to come along with a basic sort of custom default attack. So say you have a mace, you're going to get mace strike. Say you have a sword, you might have, you know, sword swing or something like that. I've only really seen the mace one from my knowledge. But what this means is that essentially you're only getting your basic attack from the weapon and Vaal skills that actually do anything for you. So now we're going to be focusing on Vaal skills. What do we get? We gain 100% more Vaal souls from killing or dealing damage to enemies. And all Vaal skills gain 1 Vaal soul per second. We also get 50% reduced soul gain prevention duration, and soul gain prevention is on a per skill basis. So the way that Vaal's soul gain prevention currently works is you've used a Vaal skill and for an extended period of time you can't gain any souls across any of your Vaal skills. This makes that on a per skill basis, so it essentially turns your Vaal skills into having their own individual cooldown, and we're reducing the length of that prevention. So this is where a ton of balance could go in to make this not overpowered, because Vaal skills are obviously very powerful, but the idea here is we're offering the player a chance to just use Vaal skills, go fully into that kind of corruption, but they're having to pay the price of maybe not having skills available when they need them, etc. Alright, now let's go up to the left and we're going to get Searing Pain. All instant damage is received over 2 seconds, and all instant damage is dealt over 4 seconds. So this is essentially a mini Progenesis, a mini kind of petrified blood, but it's very simple. It's a very simple, elegant node has started to become my catchphrase. And then all of your damage you deal on the flip side is dealt over 4 seconds. So this could be a bit of a drawback, but we've got a way to double into this that might actually become a bit of a strength. Obviously, this is a very powerful defensive layer. To just have that 2-second window gives you a chance to use a guard skill, a potion, any damage over time mitigation, like maybe we have Lethe Shade in the game. Something like that would trigger off of this, which is cool. Alright, then if we want to, we can double down and get Vanquish. Now, Vanquish is quite an interesting idea. The idea is that you can toggle this onto specific skills. So I'll read it out here. You can assign skills to be supported by Vanquish. Vanquish instantly removes and inflicts all damage over time on enemies. If the skill hits a single target, then gain 30% additional damage as chaos damage, and Vanquish has a 4-second cooldown. So, the way this works, the way it was working in my mind is, you can, in your skill UI, set aside certain skills, toggle on, okay, I want this to have Vanquish enabled on it. And what that will do is anytime you hit with that skill and the 4-second cooldown isn't up, then it's going to take all of the damage over time and instantly deal it that's on that enemy. This works across many enemies, anything you hit, essentially. The cooldown has to be there, because what would end up happening if it wasn't is you inflict a big bleed with your 2-handed weapon in one slot, and then you have a dagger or some fast attacking thing to quickly get rid of all the damage over time, and then go back and forth, and you would just be 1-2ing this combo constantly, and it would feel like a chore and a bit gimmicky, to be honest. So having that 4-second cooldown means that you have to think about when you're going to do it. You're not worried about constantly triggering this. You can always just build up more and more damage over time and then trigger it all at once. Maybe you just have one big slam which triggers it, and then that covers the whole area or something like that. And then at the bottom we have enemies that are killed by Vanquish. So if you have enough damage over time to immediately kill them and you use Vanquish, then you're going to grant an endurance charge, which is pretty nice. A little bit of a defensive thing. Maybe you're empowering your attacks with endurance charges and that becomes your Vanquish attack. Who knows? Alright, now let's go up and we're getting Unholy Visage. Enemies lose 1% chaos resistance per 10 strength, and you gain 1 chaos resistance per 5 intelligence. 1% of physical damage is converted to chaos damage per 1% uncapped chaos resistance you have. So this is a way for you to convert all of your physical damage over to chaos damage, as long as you've got the chaos resistance to support it. Alright, so defensively this is allowing you to get your chaos resistance up, stacking intelligence. You can convert all of your physical damage over to chaos damage, and then enemies' chaos resistance is going to be reduced based on your strength. So how you want to move your attributes about, how you want to stack different things. Is it worth stacking, or can you get penetration or any sort of debuff anywhere else that's going to handle their chaos resistance? And then on top of that, obviously being able to have an option to convert your physical over to chaos is an interesting thing, that especially for a hit-based build and someone that might be doing a lot of physical attacks, physical damage, it just opens up new options for you. So the numbers on this one in particular would need tons of balance work. Maybe it needs to be, maybe you need to have 200 uncapped chaos resistance to get the full conversion. That can be down to the balance team. So now let's move down to the bottom again, and we're going to look at Fel Chant. So Fel Chant is a fun one. I've done a little bit of extra design for this one, and I basically wanted to just offer like a kind of, I was imagining that section of the tree, and I was thinking, okay, so we've got like curses and auras on the top with the witch and things like that. The Templar feels very aura heavy, and then beneath us we've got like war cries, and that's that kind of like self-buffing sort of option. So I thought, what if we can try and combine those? So you gain the Fel Chant meta skill. War cries can be socketed into Fel Chant to become chants, inverting their effects and applying them to enemies in an area. Each war cry reserves 50 spirit. So I've got a little bit of design here. Let's bring it up as some examples. All right, so on the left, we've got Intimidating Cry, and I imagine what that would convert into is Emboldened Chant. So Intimidating Cry intimidates enemies, it empowers our melee attacks to give us double damage, and gives us some movement speed. But then Emboldening Chant, enemies are emboldened, taking 10% less damage from you. That's from their perspective. So essentially, that we're taking 10% less damage from them. They have minus 18% movement speed, and then every third attack deals 30% less damage. Also 10% increased effect of that chant per 5 power, up to 25 max power. So how the power system works with chants would simply be is updating every second to affect the amount of enemies around you. So say you've got 30 power worth of enemies around you, then this would have, 30 power affecting it. And we've got another example here of Enduring Cry. So Enduring Cry, as you all know, it gives you endurance charges in PoE 1. That probably won't be the case in PoE 2, we don't know, but it also gives you life regeneration. And then on the flip side of that, inverting it, we've got Diminishing Chant. So it means they can't gain charges, and then they're dealt 10% of their life as physical damage over time per second, divided by their enemy power. So a unique enemy has 20 power. You would divide 10% per second by 20, and then for something like a normal monster, then they only have 1 power, so essentially they're taking 10% of their life per second as physical damage over time. Again, numbers on this might need to be tweaked, but this also has an increased effect per power around you. So the more enemies that are around you, the more this is going to be powered up and have an increased effect. I also took the liberty of designing a unique, so I was thinking about this effect, and I thought it would be cool if perhaps it was on an item as well that other classes could have access to. And I came up with Dune Chant. It's a paladin crown. Also, I want to give props to Fire Penguin Master for his inspiration for the design of the sort of reworked tooltips. I personally think this is a better way to design items in PoE 2, but I totally get that they're probably not going to do that, but I really loved his design. You can see that you've got different markers for the implicit on the item, for prefixes and for suffixes. The item art is up in the top right. It manages to condense everything down a little bit, but anyway, this is the idea. You're getting energy shield, increased armor and energy shield on the base. Then you've got 142 max life, so very defensive. And then we get these suffixes. War crimes become Fel Chants with 21% increased effect. Nearby enemies' chaos and fire resistance is reduced by 9%, and nearby enemies are cursed with despair. So yeah, very powerful. This would, I imagine, be quite a bit of a chase, or something that's quite powerful for the kind of class that would want to use it. But it would open up, this opportunity for Fel Chant, this inversion of war cries, to be available to other characters, which is kind of cool. And then at the bottom here, I've put like a little flavor thing. Imagine you had this helmet. When you first equip it, there's like a little flourish of Gregorian chant, that like thing like Halo or whatever. And then every time you kill a rare or unique, there would be like this dark litany, of a similar thing. If you've ever listened to like, Warhammer 40k Dark Litany playlists on YouTube like me, Doom Chant, I think, Google it if you haven't Googled it, it's very weirdly relaxing. Alright, let's get back to the Ascendancy tree. So that is Fel Chant, a way to convert your war cries into a form of detrimental aura. Now, let's move around. Again, armor, energy shield, and some damage. And then we've got Soulbound. So, bind them to you. Bind them to their doom. Your attacks have a 25% chance to chain enemies you hit to another enemy within 2 meters. hitting a chained enemy proliferates this chance to all chained enemies. So essentially that's just every time you hit someone and there's someone in the chain is near another enemy and it triggers, then they're going to chain them to them, and you're going to essentially create this like long chain of enemies. Chained enemies are hindered and cannot move beyond 2 meters from one another, and all ailments spread to all chained enemies. Obviously very useful if you're using ailments and you want to proliferate some ailments, but also I thought this was just mechanically a quite unique and interesting idea that you can hit a load of enemies and they're all going to be chained together, and then they're going to be essentially as slow as the slowest enemy in that group. So if one of them is static, then they're all stuck there, right, as an example. But you've got to get into the thicker things in order to chain them up in the first place. I just thought this could be, it's a bit of a weird one, it's a wild one, and I don't know how it would actually play. You'd have to really play test this, but I thought it'd be really cool to create your own freaking like gang, you know, chain gang of just like, you know, different enemies and stuff, and have them all kind of like be subjugated by you. All right, next let's go across. So this one we're getting a lot more armor and a lot more energy shield, and the reason for that is because of the Covenant. Sacrifice all energy shield and gain added physical damage equal to 30% of that total. The 30% number, you'll have to figure that out. That's a balance thing. But the idea here is very simple. We've seen stuff like this in PoE 1, and that is that you can build as much energy shield as you want. Obviously things like energy blade, but this doesn't ruin your weapon or anything. You build as much energy shield as you can get, and then you're converting that into physical damage. So you're making a bit of a pact to sacrifice something in order to gain this like unholy power. Yes, a dark pact with dark tidings is the flavor text on it. All right, and then we come up from here into different ways, and this is one of my favorite nodes, I think, on the tree next, is a duo node of different options of how we can sort of use our chaos damage and affect it. So, increased armor and energy shield, and then we've got Soulburn and Soul Break. So we'll start off with Soulburn. You gain Chaotic Might. So Chaotic Might gives you 30% of your physical damage as extra chaos damage. So you can think of that just as that. You gain 30% of phys damage as extra chaos. Your chaos damage can ignite, and enemies lose 2% chaos resistance per second they have been ignited, up to 50%. So as long as you keep igniting them, you can ignite them with your chaos damage, so you don't ever have to worry about fire damage to gain ignite. You're essentially chipping away constantly at their chaos resistance and going to be building up more and more damage, as well as having a nice extra damage bonus from your phys damage. And then on this side, Soul Break, the soul can be shattered. Same sort of thing, so you're getting Chaotic Might again, that 30% of phys as extra chaos, but then a different way. So we're not igniting, we're not sort of going that route, we're going into armor break. Chaos damage can break armor equal to 2% of damage dealt. That number would need to be worked out. But also, your chaos damage is calculated equally with physical damage for stun. So for those of you that don't know, the idea is that all damage in PoE can build up stun threshold on enemies. You get stun build up from all damage. However, physical damage is much more effective at doing that. And so what this does is then brings chaos damage in and gives it parity. So it's also just as effective as physical damage at building that stun up. And then on the bottom, we've got a very similar line, which is enemies lose 4% chaos resistance per second they've been stunned, up to 50%. I had to put that one a bit higher because I imagine it's much easier to ignite than it is to stun an enemy in terms of duration. So what I wanted to offer here was a different way to get some chaos penetration. Now in Unholy Visage, we have that option of increasing your strength, and then you're going to be reducing their chaos resistance that way. However, what if you don't want to build a load of strength? What if you want to lean more into spells? You don't need the strength for anything. Then you can come through, use your physical spells, and you're going to be able to get some chaos penetration that way. So that, my friends, is the FELLSWORN. That is my version of a Dark Templar in Path of Exile 2. I hope you dug it. I love this archetype almost as much as I love the pure Holy Paladin archetype. So I'll definitely be putting the Zealot up. We managed to win the Ascendancy battle with the Zealot as well by, you know, a fair margin. So I know that you guys were kind of digging it, and I will share that as a standalone video soon. But let me know what you think of the Dark Paladin. I think if I was going to pick my favorite node, it's actually really difficult for this one because I like Fel Chant as an idea. I love fear mechanics. And the damage over time thing I think is really cool and would change up the defenses and offenses of this class a ton. Do you know what? I'm going to go with Soul Power. And the reason is, I just think it would be really interesting to see how you could make a Vaal-only skill build work. And all of the options that would open up. And I just think thematically it's really cool. It's like you're so far down the path that you've forgotten how to, like, you know, do, like, use normal kind of virtue gems. And you are instead just, like, purely corrupted and you only know how to use that corruption. So, cool idea. Yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what favorite node you would pick or how you would imagine playing this kind of thing, or even if you would want to play it. As well as the fact, if you think there's any improvements to be made, I'm always open to suggestions. Alright, so we have a new video coming out every single day up until early access. Very excited about this. Most of them are going to be these Ascendancy class designs. We've got 36 to get through, and this was number 20, so we've got 16 more that you can look out for. But we're also going to be doing some other things. We've got some League design content that I know some of you have been waiting for, in terms of we've redesigned Delve, or we've imagined what Delve could be like in PoE 2. And then we've got a couple of other bits as well that I will wait and let you see in due course. Please do remember to subscribe, share this with your friends, and like the video if you liked the video. So that's going to do it for this one, friends, exiles. I'll see you in the next one. Ta-da.